Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to rise tonight and join what has been primarily, and I think most appropriately, a nonpartisan discussion where there are vast areas of agreement. In that context, I want to start by thanking the Honourable Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan, for making it possible for us to have an emergency debate tonight, to the Speaker for accepting the request for an emergency debate. There have been so many very fine speeches this evening, and I hesitate to mention some of them for missing others, but the member for Kitchener South, Don Valley West, the Minister of International Development herself, the member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, the Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh, Parliamentary Secretary for Heritage, and the member for Mississauga, Aaron Mills, and a number of other parliamentary secretaries, including the Parliamentary Secretary to Global Affairs, have contributed to our knowledge, to our deep sense of outrage, and to the awareness of the possibilities that exist for Canada to do more, accepting, and I do, that our government has responded as the Minister for International Development has outlined. But I do believe we need to do more. Madam Speaker, it was a bit of a shock in digging through the background of this issue to realize how clearly this attempt, this ethnic cleansing / genocide, and I think genocide is an appropriate term, has been in the works for some time. I came across an extremely prescient view of Professor Penny Green, who published back 2 years ago in 2015 what was described. Penny Green, by the way, was a professor at the International State Crime Initiative of Queen Mary University of London. And she set out 5 stages of genocide as it relates to the Rohingya in Myanmar. 1, stigmatization, denied citizenship, not acknowledged as one of Myanmar's official ethnic groups, labeled Bengalis. This has been referenced before, but I found it extremely prescient. 2, harassment, job discrimination, religious persecution, attacks by state security. 3, isolation. In 2012, herded into camps, villages cut off. 4, systematic weakening, identity cards removed so they cannot vote, barred from traveling, leading to loss of livelihood. And 5, mass annihilation, to which Professor Green wrote, has not yet occurred, but no one has been prosecuted for a killing spree against the Rohingyas in 2012. Yeah. That, of course, in 2012 was a mass killing where evidence exists that it was orchestrated. It was made to appear as though random mobs had killed 200 Muslims in Setka, but the reality of witnesses reporting that they were brought in by trucks, assisted by the military, to begin what became a campaign of fear. That ethnic cleansing of 2012 was a stage in what is described again as a process of genocide. And as this escalated without response, without consequences for those who murdered innocent people, it set the stage for what we've seen since August 25th in a mass annihilation, a process that has taken the world and shocked the world because the refugee crisis, by its pace, over 400,000 people displaced fleeing to Bangladesh in barely a month, is one that has exceeded even recent experience in the exodus from Rwanda or even from Syria. The United Nations International Organization for Migration has proclaimed this refugee movement as, quote, unprecedented in terms of volume and speed, unquote. And many speeches tonight have already cited the various conclusions that the words ethnic cleansing apply, or certainly potentially, and I believe it is an attempt at genocide, especially when you examine the systematic efforts that lead us to this place to try to remove Muslims from Myanmar. Now, this is shocking at many, many levels, particularly because of the role of one of my heroes, Nobel Prize winner, Aung San Suu Kyi. We looked at her in her house arrest in Myanmar for all those years as an icon of democracy. I was very moved and I appreciated the decision of the previous government to grant her honorary Canadian citizenship. No one would have doubted that the Nobel Prize Committee was correct in giving her a Nobel Prize. And now, as we heard most recently in the speech from the honourable member for Mississauga, Erin Mills, constituents in her riding are saying, let's take away her Nobel Prize, let's take away her Canadian citizenship. It certainly is astonishing for anyone who appreciates the religion of Buddhism as one that is committed to nonviolence. You look at any number of Buddhist communities which have exemplified nonviolence to such an extent as they do in Tibet, or places where we know that within communities that are Buddhist, rare tigers are safe because of a practice and belief and faith in nonviolence. So this adds to the level of shock and disbelief, but I gather, like I admit, as many Canadians must now be wondering, that the sense that democracy was arriving and Myanmar was emerging and that we could support this government, and that it claims that someone like Aung San Suu Kyi would be equally guilty of promoting ethnic cleansing, were just hard to digest. So how do we find a solution here? Because it's clear that Aung San Suu Kyi has been willing to promote ethnic cleansing in that country. Well, some ideas come to mind. Some have been mentioned before, but let me go through 3 ideas in closing. One that's been mentioned is very important to look at the advice from the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, an organization that itself holds a Nobel Peace Prize, one that will never be questioned. For that campaign, for the Ottawa campaign, to have an international treaty on landmines has saved lives already, and it can do more. So it is true, as an honourable member on the Conservative side mentioned earlier tonight, that Myanmar is not a party to the international treaty to ban landmines. But Bangladesh is. And Bangladesh achieved in April 2017 an agreement with the border military of Myanmar to allow the clearing of landmines. Since the beginning of this campaign of terror, a number of organizations, including information collected by the research arm of the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, the Landmine Monitor, had direct eyewitness accounts of the Myanmar military arriving and unloading trucks loaded with landmines, placing anti-personnel devices on the very paths that the Rohingya Muslims would use to flee to Bangladesh. Those were eyewitnesses' accounts of August 28th. Amnesty International has also interviewed many witnesses who've seen the military adding new landmines. If Canada could offer help to Bangladesh, military assistance and our expertise in removing landmines, and financial support to remove landmines, that would be one thing we could do on top of everything else we've done. 2, many members here have already said we need to do everything possible to clear the way for NGOs, civil society organizations, to get in on the ground and provide assistance. Food and medicine on the Bangladeshi side of the border, a very poor country that now has over 400,000 desperate refugees. We can certainly do more to provide assistance there, but we can also demand of the government of Myanmar that NGOs and relief agencies be allowed into Myanmar to provide relief. The last one is an idea that I don't know if I missed anyone saying it earlier today, I apologize, but it strikes me as possible that we could use Aung San Suu Kyi's global reputation and status as an honorary Canadian citizen and pressure her far more directly to rescue her completely burnished halo, to stand up for human rights and to stand up for the rights of Muslims within Myanmar, and find any way we can through diplomacy in this horrific situation. If such a thread of hope exists, it's worth trying. In any case, I thank my colleagues for an extremely important emergency debate, and I thank the government for what it's done so far, and I beg it to do more. Thank you, Madam Speaker.